I'm Ethan, I'm 28, and I came home for Thanksgiving to find my family had abandoned my dying grandfather with me, leaving behind a shoebox of secrets. Before I tell you how that shoebox led to their total ruin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. The miles had melted away under my tires, each one bringing me closer to a feeling I'd been craving for months. Home. The Chicago skyline was a distant memory in my rearview mirror. Out here, the world opened up. The sky was a vast, bruised purple, and the trees lining the highway were skeletal against the dying light. It was that perfect late November evening, the kind that smells like cold earth and the promise of snow. I was done with being a graphic designer, done with deadlines and demanding clients. For the next 4 days, I was just going to be a grandson, a son, a brother. I could already taste my mom's legendary Thanksgiving turkey and feel the familiar warmth of my Grandpa Arthur's house. Pulling into the long gravel driveway, a small, cold seed of unease started to sprout. The house was a silhouette, no welcoming golden light spilling from the windows. My brother Ryan's flashy new SUV wasn't there. My mom Linda's sensible sedan was missing. Only the ancient oak tree stood guard, its branches like gnarled fingers reaching for the twilight. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, but empty. I used my key, the lock turning with a loud click that echoed through the stillness. The air that hit me wasn't warm and filled with the scent of roasting food. It was frigid and musty, like a room that had been sealed for weeks. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding thin and foreign in the cavernous silence. "Mom? Ryan? I'm here." Nothing. Just the hum of the old refrigerator from the kitchen. My duffel bag dropped to the floor with a heavy thud. I walked through the familiar rooms, flipping on lights as I went. The living room was spotless, unnaturally so. The kitchen was clean, the sink empty. It looked like no one had cooked a meal here in days. Then, on the center of the gleaming dining room table, I saw it. A single white envelope. It was propped up against a salt shaker, looking stark and deliberate. My name, Ethan, was slashed across the front in my brother's aggressive, barely legible script. My fingers felt numb as I picked it up. A sense of dread, cold and heavy, settled in my stomach. This wasn't a welcome note. I tore it open. The message inside was a gut punch. "Gone on a Caribbean cruise with Mom. You'll stay home and take care of Grandpa. He needs you." That was it. Not a "wish you were here." Not an "we'll call you." It was an order. An abdication. I read the words over and over, trying to make them mean something else. A cruise. They had gone on a cruise. They had left my 82-year-old grandfather, a man with a failing heart, and just left. A floorboard creaked above me, and my head snapped up. I'd forgotten. Grandpa. I found him in his bedroom upstairs. He was sitting in his favorite armchair by the window, a thick Afghan pooled around his frail frame. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought he was gone. His head was slumped, his eyes closed, his breathing almost imperceptible. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice thick. His eyelids fluttered, then opened. He looked at me, and I saw with a jolt that his eyes weren't cloudy or distant. They were sharp, and they were filled with a desperate, terrifying fear. He tried to speak, but it came out as a dry, rasping cough. He lifted a trembling hand, not to wave, but to point. He pointed to a dusty, faded Nike shoebox sitting on the floor next to his chair. He wet his lips, his breath hitching. "Help me, Ethan," he finally managed to whisper, the words barely audible. "Please." The box. Looking into my grandfather's eyes, I understood. This wasn't a vacation. It was an abandonment. And that shoebox wasn't full of old memories. It was a cry for help. It was the only weapon he had left. And he had just handed it to me. I carried the shoebox downstairs as if it were a bomb. In the harsh, sterile light of the kitchen, I placed it on the table. It sat there, an ordinary object that suddenly felt menacing. My mind was reeling, trying to process the sheer, calculated coldness of the note. "He needs you." The words were a mockery, a way to frame their desertion as some kind of noble sacrifice on my part. I needed to hear their voices, I needed to hear them try to justify this. I dialed Ryan's number first, straight to a crackly, automated voicemail message. "Hey, you've reached Ryan. I'm probably off doing something awesome. Leave a message." I hung up without leaving one. Then I tried my mom. The same result. Her cheerful, recorded voice a stark contrast to the icy reality I was facing. My anger was a hot, useless thing. I paced the kitchen, the note clutched in my fist. A part of me, a small, childish part, wanted to believe this was all a huge misunderstanding. A terribly planned, poorly executed surprise of some kind. But I knew better. My brother, Ryan, had always been the golden child. He could do no wrong in our mother's eyes. He was charming, ambitious, and utterly self-absorbed. I was the quiet one, the artistic one, the one who was reliable and therefore taken for granted. This felt like the ultimate expression of that dynamic. Finally, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I opened the box. The contents were a chaotic jumble of a life's anxieties. It wasn't neatly organized. It was the desperate collection of a man who knew something was wrong but didn't know how to fight it. There were dozens of pharmacy receipts. I started laying them out and a pattern emerged. Prescriptions for my grandfather's heart medication, losartan, were being refilled only partially. Instead of a 90-day supply, there were receipts for 30 days, sometimes 15. Tucked into one of the bags was a tiny, scribbled note in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. Ryan said insurance wouldn't cover more, said I had to make it last. My stomach churned. I knew for a fact my grandfather had excellent insurance from his days as an engineer. Deeper in the box, I found bank statements, most of them 6 or 7 months old. I wasn't a financial expert, but even I could see the bleeding. Regular, weekly cash withdrawals. $300 here, $500 there. Always from an ATM near Ryan's upscale condo in the city. Beside one withdrawal, another of Grandpa's notes. For my groceries and bills. Or holds the cash for me. I thought about the state of the refrigerator, a half-empty carton of milk, some old carrots, and a few frozen dinners. That wasn't $500 a week worth of food. The final insult was a stack of credit card statements. Tucked among the legitimate charges for utilities and property taxes were dozens of others I didn't recognize. Charges from high-end restaurants I knew Grandpa would never go to. A recurring charge for a premium gym membership. A bill for over $1,000 from a designer clothing store. It was my mother's card, a joint account with my grandfather. She was living a life of luxury on his dime, all while his medication was being rationed. It was all there, a sordid story told in paper and ink. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just neglect. This was systematic plunder. My phone rang, startling me. It was Ryan. The caller ID picture showed him with a goofy grin, tanned and happy. I answered, my voice dangerously quiet. "What? Hey, finally got service," he said, his voice breezy. Loud music and the sound of waves crashed in the background. "Just checking in. How's the old man? How do you think he is, Ryan?" I asked, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. "You left him. Alone." "Oh, relax," he scoffed. "He's tougher than he looks. It's a week. You can handle it. It's your turn to do some of the heavy lifting for a change. Mom and I have been dealing with him for years. We needed this." "Heavy lifting?" I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "I'm looking at his bank statements, Ryan. I'm looking at receipts. What exactly is the heavy lifting you've been doing? Helping him spend his life savings." There was a sudden, sharp silence on the other end of the line. The music seemed to fade. "What are you talking about?" he said, his voice losing its breezy tone, replaced by a defensive edge. "I'm talking about the weekly cash withdrawals, the restaurant bills, the fact that he thinks his insurance won't cover his damn heart medication." Ryan laughed, but it was a brittle, ugly sound. "Oh, for God's sake. You're listening to him? Ethan, he's losing his mind. It's sad, but it's true. He gets confused. He makes things up. He thinks people are stealing from him. This classic paranoia. We've been trying to manage his finances to protect him from himself. You wouldn't understand. To protect him from himself. The lie was so audacious, so complete, that it left me speechless. "Don't be a sucker, little brother," Ryan said, his voice regaining its confidence now that he had his narrative straight. "He's playing you. Just keep him safe, keep him fed, and don't listen to his crazy stories. We'll sort it all out when we get back. Gotta go, the bar's opening." He hung up before I could say another word. I sank into a chair, his words echoing in my head. He's losing his mind. This classic paranoia. Don't be a sucker. For one dizzying, terrible moment, I wavered. What if he was right? What if this box of papers was just the ramblings of a confused old man, and I was making a horrible mistake? The thought was a lifeline, a way out of this nightmare. It would be so much easier to believe that. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend since kindergarten, Lucas. "Happy Turkey Day, man. Don't eat too much." Without thinking, I called him. The whole ugly story spilled out of me. The note, the cruise, the shoebox, Ryan's phone call. I laid it all bare, the words tumbling over each other in a torrent of anger and confusion. When I was done, Lucas was quiet for a long beat. I could hear the murmur of his own family in the background, a warm, happy sound that felt a world away. "Ethan," he said finally, his voice low and serious, "I'm going to say this as your friend. Your brother is a gaslighting, manipulative piece of garbage. But what if he's right?" I asked, my voice small. "What if Grandpa is just confused? Does he seem confused to you?" Lucas pressed. "When you look him in the eye, what do you see?" I thought of my grandfather's gaze when he pointed to the box. It wasn't confusion. It was fear. It was lucidity. It was a plea. "No," I admitted. "He seems scared." "Exactly," Lucas said. "And think about it. When has Ryan ever done anything that wasn't for his own benefit? Remember when he borrowed your car in college and racked up $1,000 in parking tickets? Or when he convinced your mom to co-sign his condo lease? This is what he does. He takes. You're not the sucker here, Ethan. You're the one who's finally seeing things clearly." His words were like a splash of cold water. He was right. This was a pattern, a lifetime of behavior, just escalated to a horrifying new level. A soft knock at the back door made me jump. I opened it to find Margaret, Grandpa's neighbor, holding a foil-covered casserole dish. Her husband, Harold, stood beside her, his face etched with concern. "Ethan, dear," Margaret said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We saw your car. We were just worried, with it being so quiet over here." "They went on a trip," I said, the lie feeling flimsy and stupid. Harold snorted, a gruff, impatient sound. "A trip," he said, shaking his head. "That's a nice way of putting it. Son." I wasn't going to say anything, but Margaret insisted. He looked me straight in the eye. "2 weeks ago, I was in my yard. I saw your grandfather come out to get the mail. He slipped on a patch of wet leaves. Went down hard. I started running over, but Ryan was standing right there on the porch, talking on his phone. He looked down at your grandpa, looked back at his phone, and didn't move an inch." Margaret picked up the story, her voice trembling with indignation.